YouTube. Hello, my friends. It says here we're live. It's the Bradley J. Show with some super special guests today. We have May Pang, we have Chachi Lupret, and we have Erik Taros. May Pang, John Lennon's lover during his Lost Weekend era, and she's got a big thing going on where she's going to showcase her candid photos of John at a special 2-day free exhibition over at the Great City Winery. That's Saturday and Sunday, March 18 and 19. And all these works are available to purchase. So we're going to get some stories and find out more about this really cool thing. We're going to celebrate it. Chachi Lupret, as you know, is a fan-storian, super fan, historian, brand new word. And Erik Taros is a Beatles film archivist, and you'll find out in a little while why that's relevant. So Chachi, you're a big MC type of dude, so I'm going to hand it over to you primarily. Go.
Well, Bradley, you know that whenever I come on your show, I always bring friends, and today is probably the most special of the friends I've brought to your program. Two really, really special people I consider friends. First, Erik Taros and I go back 40 years in Boston, and we are stage show partners when we do our Beatles stage shows in theaters. We've been friends for 40 years. As I said, he's a Beatles film archivist, has worked on many projects, including this one. And we're here with May Pang. I've known about May Pang and for so many years. There's her books right there, Loving John and
I see
Instamatic Karma. And I was just telling Bradley J, just a side story, that camera that John was holding. Before I started in radio in the 70s, I worked at Polaroid, and my job, May, was that specific camera. My job was to stand in a one of those lines, and I would put the red button on every one. I did thousands of cameras, so maybe that's one of those red buttons, Erik, that I
it could be.
that I put
Wouldn't
on.
that be amazing? I know.
Yeah.
That is great. I still love that camera, and I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people didn't realize that when it was test marketed, and John found out it down in Florida first.
Mhm.
Somehow they always get it first, and somebody was going down in the team that we were working on a film, and wouldn't you know it, he goes, well, bring one of those back. That was the end. I mean, that's the whole thing. Everybody started getting it because he was the one. He loved that instant.
That's right.
That the minute you can get something like it is now, only Polaroid. Now I just got to ask, Fuji. I saw it in England. Fuji put out a film that was similar to Polaroid, but theirs was a little bit better in the process when it came out. It actually was a nicer. I hate saying that, but it was nicer. A picture that came out. It was more than the Polaroid, where you could still there was still movement. You didn't see it on the Fuji one, which I was surprised. I wish they had done the same thing. I love Polaroid, really.
Yeah, I do too. And when I left Polaroid after 7 years in 1981 to join WBCN and take a major pay cut, I was just sad that Polaroid didn't see digital coming. And it turned into a penny stock. People used to say, if you're working at Polaroid, you're set for life. But they are gone to this day, and so that's too bad. But you took many photos, May, through your 13 months with John, and I know we have.
It's a little longer than 13. Let's
Oh yes,
18 months, isn't it? More like
and more. It's just
Right.
18 will make it at 18.
Well, we're excited to have you coming to Boston Saturday and Sunday at City Winery, as Bradley mentioned. But we're even more excited to see the film, The Lost Weekend, a love story on which Erik worked with you on. So tell us about the movie, May. And it took many years for it to come out. You finally are telling your story in film, and that must be gratifying to you and all exciting, and that this film is coming out next month.
It was it took a lot out of me. I've done the book, but nothing reaches, until somebody sees it on camera, or on film, on television, on the screen, or whatever. And I've been asked over the years to do that, and I wasn't ready. And it just happened at the right time, and that was over 5 years, now 6 years ago when it started. So I was a little scared, and it's about the time period. Everybody was writing about me. Everybody would call me up and say, "Hey, I'm doing a film and I want to include that Lost Weekend. Will you tell me about it?" And I said, "No, because I know what's going to happen. I've seen it go on and on. John used to say to me, they're going to make up stories about you. And I said, how? Well, I got, I finally understand that one now. But yeah, you know, I thought maybe it's time when you start seeing it in print, how all of a sudden things are being stripped away and people are talking about you that's not true and it didn't happen the way that everybody perceives it to be, that it was me that had to come out and finally say exactly what went on. And with Erik, thank you, Erik, for all your hard work, because everybody had to go out and gather the info about me. And I had no idea what was out there because I used to try to stay even in the background, even with John. I didn't really want to stay in front. I wanted to sit in the background. And so, I mean, you know, I remember people coming up to me and saying, hey, can I have your autograph? I said, you don't want mine. You really want his. And I would point to John. And they said, no, we want yours. And they'd be begging. And I go, no, you want his. And I would just say, not really. You know, and that was the hardest part, Erik. I'm sure you understand that one. And I'm sure he can tell you more because and then I saw things I had never seen of myself. So it's kind of interesting. But that's the crux of it was the 18 months that's been known as the Lost Weekend.
Well, even if I just jump in on that, I think one of the great messages that this film answers is the whole idea of the Lost Weekend was a bit of PR. Maybe I always attributed to May would tell me these stories that John was a big fan of 1940s movie actors, you know, American. And so it's kind of interesting that he chose to label that period of time, the Lost Weekend, the old Ray Milland film, about an alcoholic writer. And I guess for the first few months, you could say that John was sort of telling us something, wasn't he? Because he was hitting the bottle a little hard until he straightened himself
you
up.
know, that's what this whole movie's about too. The couple of times that you read about him in the newspaper that he was drunk and all that was really with Harry. But we're talking, if you really read it, it's the same situation over and over that they kept printing, so it sounded like he was drunk every day. And after a while, like you said, you know, John got tired of people saying, well, what was it like, you know, being drunk every day? And finally he just said, you know, it was a long lost weekend. Again, the reference to the movie, which of course a lot of people, the younger set, would not know the Lost Weekend with Ray Milland, but back then people would understand it, I hope. But it was easier for him to say it that way than to keep saying and explain. So he didn't like to keep it explained to a million people. So that was his way of doing it. But yes, you're right. And I kept, the producers kept that title and changed the last bit and said, The Lost Weekend, a love story, because in the end, when you see the movie, you'll see the whole thing. Right, Erik?
Absolutely. Well, you know, the lost part of the Lost Weekend was finding May's television appearances. That's the only thing that was lost in that weekend that I can see. So luckily, some friends of mine and myself had a little, I think May knows, I've confessed, we all have little crushes on May. And especially when Loving John came out, May did, you know, media appearances. Now, one of the great misconceptions about when you do a film like this is that, oh, I'll just go to, you know, Metro Media. I'll just go to whatever company owned the Alan Thicke show, Thick of the Night, and they'll have the tapes. Well, of course not. It's all gone. So one of the big challenges was, you know, we live in a world where you have to deliver a movie in 2 or 4K these days. So all of the stuff we had of May was on VHS tapes, you know, I mean, some of it was even off air, you know, with rabbit ears or whatever, you know. So some of the technology involved in this film really blows me away. I'd get material out to the producers, and they, you know, there's different ways with artificial intelligence that you can bump up the quality of stuff now, but I didn't realize how well you could do it. So some of these appearances that you'll see May telling her own story kind of, you know, 10 years after the fact, for most of the footage is in that a lot of it's from that first tour you did, May.
Let me bump in here and remind folks that we're with May Pang, Erik Taros, and Chachi, and we're celebrating this show coming up on Saturday where you can see May Pang's photos etc. And Erik is now talking about getting materials for the film. I just want to let people know what's going on if they just joined us. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah, well, like I say, I got a phone call from one of the producers, is a guy I've known for years. I actually met him, Stuart Samuels, many, many years ago, working on, he was on the original production staff of what eventually became 8 Days a Week, the Ron Howard picture. Before Ron had it, Stuart was one of the other producers of that film. So he called me about this. He goes, "Hey, this is going to be right up your alley." And I'm like, "Well, I love May, so sure, I'd love to do this." And it just sort of started this odyssey. But I will say, one of the things that's so cool about this film is the way it's put together. The way May's images, her still photography comes to life in this. And it segues so beautifully with the film bits that we could find. And I'm kind of known as this guy that finds rare Beatlesy things. And there's plenty of stuff that people really haven't seen before. There is a brief scene. May, you and John went to go see Robert Stigwood's musical called Sergeant Pepper on the Road.
Yes. I mean, it turns out, John was a lot more, how should I say, he was a more sociable person at that time. So we kept running into all the old friends, and one of them happened to be Robert Stigwood. And Robert was working on the Sergeant Pepper, sort of the off Broadway type of thing. And he asked John, would he give him a hand on promotion? And we did do that. And that's what you're seeing. It was in front of the Beacon Theater. We were at the opening that night. Everything he could do to help his old friend, Robert Stigwood. What was terrible was that the original actor that was supposed to be there and to take the role was Bruce. He was married to an actress, and I'm sorry, I lost.
Was it Bruce Dern? Was it Dern?
No. Oh God.
I think he broke his leg or something, though, didn't he?
Yeah, he broke his arm. He fell,
yeah.
And he did all the advertising and promotion with the guy. And 2 weeks later, he breaks his arm, and they had to get somebody else in. I felt so bad. I said all that, and now we had to get somebody else. He wasn't part of it.
So there's some rare stuff. So there's a little bit of footage, the only known color movie ever taken of that stage play, and just that was kind of a weird picture. I mean, it was almost like the Love Show, like a prototype of the Love Show as far as the costumes and the way that was staged. So it's just one of many adventures in the picture.
Yeah, Bradley, you have some.
May, can I ask you about the thought process of choosing the photos? You have a gazillion photos, probably. You can't choose them all. Did you just choose them based on the best photos aesthetically, or is there a message you're trying to? Is there something you're trying to show about John, or about you, or about both?
It's a little bit of both. I think Scott Seelbaum was the guy that came up to me, and he'd been after me for years to do this tour, and I obviously didn't do anything while I was making the movie. And he hit the right time. I said one day, and I just kept putting him off. And he came up just only 2 to 3 weeks ago, because I said, "Okay, I'm ready." Well, he just kept looking at everything that I had, and he goes, "Oh, I love this, I love this, I love this." And so he just took a bunch, and then he went off, and he sort of looked at it, and I said, "You're the expert," because I'd be partial. I'd say, "I don't know which one, just choose it. It's like your babies. What are you going to do? Which one do you say?" So I let him do the choosing to see which one. Yeah, I let him do the choosing.
Were you surprised by his choices?
Yeah, some of them. And then I would say, "How about this one?" And he goes, "Oh, that's not bad, but how about this?" He would come back with it. So there are a few that are my favorites that are in there, and then there are others that he chose that he thought would be a good fit.
Chach, what do you got?
And that's the focus for this weekend. This is a prelude to the opening of the film. May is doing a tour of at least 3 city winery locations, starting in
And
Boston.
I've never been to any of the new city wineries, so I'm excited.
Oh, they're beautiful venues. You're going to love the one in Boston. It's just a great environment, great food. And we're all excited because, Bradley, at 12:30 on Saturday, we've arranged for May to have a grand entrance arriving at the theater inside of Ernie Bach Jr.'s John Lennon replica Rolls Royce. Now, it's not the the particular year. They only made a limited amount of those. It's a 2004 Rolls-Royce Phantom, but it's in the spirit of John's old Rolls with the paint, and it's beautiful. So at
I've been in
12:30.
it.
Oh,
I've
you
been original. In the original.
and tell us about that. Did it have a record player? Did it play 45s? Am I
No,
correct?
now the record player, I don't know about because I didn't sit in the front.
Okay.
But on the one that I used to drive, which was the station wagon, a Chrysler, it was a boat, those big gigantic boat. It was 1972, and it was the last one of its kind. I can't believe I actually drove that thing around. It had a record player, a 45 record player in it.
Oh
And I know the person that actually whose father or whatever owns that one, but it's not a real functioning one right now, the car.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw it, I said to him, I said, an 8-track. There was no 8-track in the car. And he says, that's what, when he bought it, that's what, obviously somebody modified it, but it was an actual record player. And it was great. You just put all the 45s going up, and let it drop down when it's finished playing. I wish they still do those things, People don't even know what a 45 is anymore. I still have John's collection with me that we started out with.
Wow.
Wow,
That's
indeed.
fantastic.
Yeah.
See a list of what's on that 45 list.
Yeah, so we're inviting the public to join us at 12:30 as May pulls up. Erik will be there. I'll be there. Scott Siegelbaum as we kick off her 2-day art show, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday 1 to 5, Sunday 1 to 4 at City Winery, Boston. Come by. All of May's prints will be on display, available for purchase. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's this weekend as a prelude to the film, and then the film opens in April. We're all excited to see that. And so May is going to City Winery, Boston, New York, Philly, and I think
we'll do the City Winery, and then after that it'll be in April. It'll be New York, and then the film opens, and I will be in Philly right afterwards, like in that. I think I'm also going to be in LA in between. So that 1 week I'll be like talking to a zombie. But anybody who wants to know where they are, where the film is being shown, it's going to be, you could go on either Fandango to get it. If it's not listed in your area, they can go and get in a notice when it is. But there's still not all the theaters are up, which I've been told, because I said, how can a main city not have a place? And then or they can go on also the lostweekendtickets.com. That's their the site, the other site. They can all just check daily until I think most of them will be up probably about 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks before the actual release, which is April 13th.
Erik, anything in closing? Want to say anything before we shut down here?
Just the Lost Weekend is such a bad name, and when you consider the incredible success, I don't want to embarrass May, but that 18 months, you will learn we're 18 of the greatest months creatively for John Lennon. So come on, see us at the winery. See me and May at the winery in Philadelphia. I'm going to be down there with you, May.
And, great, fantastic.
We're going to have a surprise guest too. But that's it. Just nice to see you, Bradley.
Okay, this Saturday. And Sunday, what time should everybody show up? What's the best time to show up, Chach?
Well, show up around noon so we can all be there to welcome May at 12:30. And I love talking to May because she brings the human side to John out. I love hearing the human stories of John. He loved old movies. I know he loved cats, right? Because we have a bunch of cats here at our home, and I love that kind of stuff. Because everyone thinks he's this big idol, and he is, but he's a man, right?
He's a man. I mean, he was and sometimes most men, and I hate putting all of you in the same thing, is you can't multitask as much as the women does, and I think women should be running the world, but that's my opinion. But the thing is, he loved the cats. He loved sitting. We had a little small balcony, and we were sitting out. He loved sitting out there and just sort of watch the river go by. We could view the East River, and it reminded him of the Mersey. And a lot of people may have seen in the last couple of years, there was an apartment being sold in where we used to live. And they said, oh, this was John Lennon's apartment. And they showed this glamorous thing. And I said, what people don't understand, that we only had like maybe 800 square feet of this 4,500 square foot apartment. We only had this little thing, and that's where Julian came up. John loved it. It wasn't a huge place, but it was a comfortable place, and our bed was our couch, our everything. And when people would come by and they just stop by, like uh, two people that come to mind, like Paul and Linda, they would come by and just stop in any time. And and they couldn't believe we didn't have a ton of furniture. We had more equipment to listen, where you could play his guitars, and we had a piano. We had giant Altec speakers, and I'd be in the kitchen and I would make up, his favorite breakfast on Sunday, an English breakfast, which is, of course, most of you would know, it's that bacon and eggs and beans on toast and everything else.
And before we wrap up, I'm sorry, Bradley, I just got to ask May one other question.
I'd go all day if you like.
Listen,
I'm here. Go.
It's been years since you and John saw the UFO, and so much has changed since then. Now it seems to be, they're seeing things in the sky. We don't know what it is. I expect that you still firmly believe that there are UFOs, and tell us about that night. I mean, you've told that story so many times, but please tell it again.
I'm going to tell you a little bit of it because a lot of it talks about it in the film, so people should go see it. But the thing is, yes, I was a believer. I am a believer. You can't be thinking that we are the only planet that has people in this universe or whatever, out there. And but you don't really go 100% until you see something. I would say I was maybe 75, 80%. Yeah, there's a being out there. But when I saw this thing come overhead, and John actually called out to me because I was his witness. Because people say, oh, what's John smoking? What's John on to see this thing? Everybody knew, most of my friends, they all knew I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. Food is my drug. I love food. So I was actually getting ready to try and call for the pizza guy. So that was really where I was at. And I hear him screaming at me going, May. And I'm going, yeah. All right. And I never would come on the first call. By the third call, I heard this urgency and I come running out and I said, and I just stopped. And you see this thing and there's no noise, no nothing. And you say, I'm screaming. And he goes, you're seeing what I'm seeing. I said, it's an amazement. And I watched it for about 10 to 15 minutes. It took a slow walk, down the river.
How close did it seem to be? And how big did it seem to be?
I couldn't tell in size, but John said to me that it was like a 2-man Learjet in circumference, in that bit. And, when you don't hear any noise, you can see these white lights. And in relationship, when you see the film, you could see where it is in to us. I used to say if Reggie Jackson could hit a home run, he hit this thing. That's how close. We're not talking far. And I could hear the noise across the river. I could hear everything else. I could hear the cars below, on the street, but not this thing above my head.
And you took photos, but they didn't.
It didn't come out, and it was like it looked like overexposed film, all on the sprockets. All it was all you could see that it had gone through something. It looked like it went through those X-ray machines.
Wow. Hey Eric, we haven't heard from you in a while, and anything to
I'm still here.
I don't want to.
I'm listening. I can listen to May talk all day. I mean, sometimes a couple of times I've gotten on the phone with her, especially when we're doing the movie, and hey, May, I just got to talk to you for 5 minutes. This, and the next thing 3 hours have gone by. And it'll be like 2 in the morning, and just another thing and another thing. So get me going, and that's really the fun too. Is all the details that May remembers are what makes it so much fun. Because if you do look at the pictures of that very naughty time at the Troubadour, everybody's got a Brandy Alexander going, and she's got a Coca-Cola.
That's right. No
it's
Pepsi.
True.
Coca-Cola.
No Pepsi. I've done that test somewhere in the mall, and everybody online chose, Coke. I'm a big Coca-Cola fanatic on that one. But I want you to know, if when they see those pictures of the Brandy Alexanders, they all thought it was John. But everybody at the table was drinking it, so that's why there was so many on the table. Everybody was drinking it.
Well, Harry looked like Harry looked like he would accept a drink under extreme social pressure.
Well, poor Harry. Yes,
Mhm.
he would drink anything. I mean, I just remember him being in an office going rummaging through someone's office. And I said, "What are you looking for? This is terrible. This is not your office." And he goes, "I'm just seeing what kind of drink, what he has in here." And I was like, God.
Like,
I said, "It's 11 in the morning. This is not the right thing to do."
he's behind schedule already.
Yeah.
Will folks be able to talk to you at this event on Saturday?
Oh, absolutely. If they
and continue whatever conversation we have here, ask more about the UFO or anything at all.
Well, they could ask me questions, but they should really go see the movie, because then they'll get the full picture of what went on back
Yes.
then.
Well, I will tell you, Bradley, when Peter Wolf reaches out to me and says, "Can you connect me with May? I love May. I haven't seen her in a while because, Chachi, I had drinks with John and May and Harry, and I think he did have Brandy Alexander. He wants. I think he mentioned Hennessy and milk, maybe.
Well, that would be a brand. Isn't Hennessy? I'm not even sure. I think
Is that
Hennessy
the same
would
thing?
be
I don't
brand.
even know.
Yeah.
I'm non-alcoholic.
I'm not a drinker either. You
Yeah.
had to see. I think the worst was probably when I was dealing with Phil Spector.
Oh my God! Yeah, coming into the studio with a gun and all that other business.
Oh yeah, I mean, nobody ever talked about it until I started, and I put that in my book, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I remember that, and I'm like, well, where did anybody else do it?
God.
I have to say that was, I used to argue with him, and he didn't like it because I was too straight for him, and he would always try to say, "May's on the other side. You shouldn't trust her." This is saying it to John. And John's looking at him going,
God.
because Phil, just calm down, will you? And every night, when they were rehearsing for the rock and roll album, which we thought would have been an easy album to do, he would come in, and I had a friend there as well, and we would watch him come in after, at sundown. He'd be in, and when it's pitch dark, and then he would leave just before sunrise. And I kept thinking, is this guy Dracula or somebody? Let's get the mirror out. Just before sunrise, he would be out, and I'm like, okay, this is weird. But he was always a strange person. He would make us sing. I remember going over to his place with Chris O'Dell, Miss O'Dell to everyone, and we're still good friends. And I remember he would make us sit at 3:30 in the morning. I said, "Where are we going?" She goes, "We're getting up." I said, "Where are we going?" She goes, "To Phil's place." I said, "At 3:30 in the morning, I'm in bed. I don't want to go anywhere." He goes, No, he wants us to come over. And I said, "Oh." So I got dressed and went over. And he was always saying, he said to Chris, and it was kind of interesting. He said, "I'll get to work with John again." That never happened.
Mhm.
But he would make you sing with him. So you ended up singing all the do-ron-rons and Be My Baby on the piano as he's playing. He's going, "Come on, sing, sing."
Man, what a mess.
So it probably didn't surprise you when he went to jail.
Amongst the group of people that knew Phil, and all of us that have worked or have known him, we were not surprised, but shocked. You're always shocked. You never want to see that happen, but you could see this road that was, it was just carelessness. And when he used to wave that, when went off in the control room in the guest area, everybody else is ducking, and I'm the one that runs towards it. Typical New Yorker, right? I'm just checking to see what went on. And and I remember when the gun went off, everybody's ducking. They're all like under the table. And the person next to me was Phil's mother, and she did that too.
Did it with his mother there. Oh my God.
I had his mother. Yes, so I actually met his mother.
Wow.
Handsome woman. She wasn't, that's why I was like, you look at her and you go, what? This is the same, this is your son. And I couldn't believe it. You know, she was very, very nice. She was a very handsome looking, very well dressed woman, you know, and you wouldn't believe that the two were together.
Is this a good place to stop? I mean, we could go on forever, but we should probably not burn you out, man.
Well, Bradley, we had two very special guests today, Bradley. Erik Taros, Beatles film archivist, who
Well,
worked
here,
on
wait, before we do
Lost
that, Bradley,
Sure.
do you have another question? Because you're the one at least saying anything, so I like.
Well,
to know.
yeah, I do have one. I didn't want to
Okay.
string things out for you, but I do have
No,
one,
that's okay.
and I want to learn something by way of you. Is there anything that you learned during your time with John about life or love or anything that you took with you for the rest of your life that you can share?
Wow, that's a loaded question because he said a number of things to me. Um, and it's yeah, you know, you just don't give up, you continue. And you know, when years ago when I was making when we were splitting up, he says, don't worry. And he'd look at me and he'd said, everybody's going to know about us. And I said, sure, you know, and I'm not thinking about it at that moment. And I said, sure. And yeah, in so many ways, but I didn't think it was going to take 50 years for people to know about me. So it's there. But he said a lot of things, and in time I'll say some more. But you know, yeah, he said a lot, and but you never give up. And
Okay.
I'm, you know, and I hear him every day because it's either in his sayings, like I would watch a Law and Order, and you hear like Sam Waterston going, "Yeah, isn't it? Just get you whatever gets you through the night. Isn't that the phrase?" You know, and
Yeah.
I would go, "Oh my God, he's in this room."
All right.
So it's all those little things that happens, and I get that, and I know when he is tapping on my shoulder because
Wow.
it's weird. I'll tell you one quick one. I was in a quandary about something, and I was in a taxi cab, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going, "Oh, John, if you could only tell me if this was the right decision for me to make," because you know we would always have these conversations. And he go, you know, I said, "Well, let me know." As I'm getting out of the cab driver had a radio on, and Number 9 Dream came on, just as I'm getting out of the cab. What are your chances?
Unbelievable.
If I have to jump in because May and I share a belief, certain beliefs and certain experiences. 2 weeks before, this is a very true story. 2 weeks before I got the call from Stuart Samuels, the producer, John Lennon came to me in a dream. Now, that's not unusual for me, but every time I've ever had a dream about John Lennon, he's about 18 years old and he's wearing a leather jacket. This time he came as a man in his 30s and he had the scally cap on, you know, like he wore in that period towards the end of when you guys were hanging out. And he just appears to me, and all he says, he goes, "I need you to do something, and only you can do something." And I had no idea, and that was it. And then he's gone. And I'm like, wow, you know, I got to stop having pepperoni pizza so late at night. And so 2 weeks goes by, and Stuart Samuels calls me out of no place. He goes, "Hey, we're doing a John Lennon picture. We really need you." And I think he even used the same words. I think Stuart said to me, "Only you can find this stuff." So yeah, it's really there's a John's spirit. I totally believe his spirit had something to do with this being made.
Yeah, I did. I more and more as we were doing this film, the producers were getting all these signals all over the place, and they were like, "Oh, what?" You know, they were not. They were very surprised, and Crystal, who's our line producer, just kept getting it everywhere, and it was like in the most unusual things would be happening, and they go, "Who would have thought this?" Or "How did we get this?" And people were just coming through through the film, and having helped us move along. And you're right, Erik. We're, you know, things that we had no, you know, where did this come from? And it just did, and we just accept it, and we just do it. Yeah, it
It's
just
very
happened.
strange. It was a very interesting experience working on that film for a couple of years.
All right.
Well,
Well,
I
I'm
can't
looking
wait
forward-
to see the movie.
I can't
Yeah.
wait to see the movie, and can't wait to see you on Saturday. And you're not going to be there, Erik, on Saturday because you're.
No, I'll be there.
You are. Okay, good. And Chachi's going to be the ringleader over there. So everyone, don't miss out. This will be the thing not to miss out on this year, probably in Boston.
And it's
And
2
that's-
days. It's Saturday and
days.
Sunday.
And I'll be there. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person.
Yay!
Okay.
All right, and anybody who sees this and knows somebody else whom might enjoy watching it, please share it, and I will certainly do my part in sharing it. Thank you all, and I'll
Thank you.
see you on the 18th and the 19th. Bye,
See you
Chachi.
soon.
Bye.
Bye, Eric.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, May. Bye, May.
Bye,
Bye.
May. Bye, Eric.
Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you,
see you
guys.